Non-self and dependent arising. In our last talk, we have discussed about why people are afraid of the concept of non-self, because people will feel insecure, so they need to have something to support their mind. They need to have the concept of self to be their self for their security. And non-self and the dependent arising, we have emphasized that we should discuss the concept of non-self together with dependent arising. If we don't speak of dependent arising when we talk about the non-self, then it is easy to come to the extreme of nihilism. And if we talk about the dependent arising, then it is naturally we can achieve, we can arrive at the result of non-self. Non-self actually is the consequence of dependent arising. So we have to mention the concept of non-self and dependent arising together all the time. In this way, then we can understand that the concept of non-self doesn't mean nothing, but it is because of dependent arising. Therefore, within our five aggregates, there's no self. It is very important. When we speak about the dependent arising, then we can understand nothing can last forever. Everything is always changing. It is the concept of non-self, and the non-self is the central doctrine of Buddhism from the very beginning until today. We can say that non-self is the central part of Buddha Dharma. When we combine the ideas of non-self and the dependent arising, it becomes clear that what we are now has been conditioned by what we were in the past. The preceding moment conditions the succeeding moment, and thus there is causally order continuity to the whole process. At the moment of death, the quality of the last consciousness conditions the arising of the rebirth consciousness. Nothing is carried over, yet, depending on the last consciousness, arises the new consciousness. When we put together the ideas of non-self and the dependent arising, then we understand it doesn't mean that we have no body, we have no sensation or conception or volitional formation or consciousness. No, it doesn't mean that. We still have the body, feeling, conception, volitional formation, and a consciousness. But it is because of dependent arising. Then it means that what we know has been conditioned by what we were in the past. What we are now in this moment has been conditioned by what we were in the last moment. This is the meaning of non-self, and also this is the doctrine of dependent arising. Because what we know in this moment depends on what we were in the last moment, and what we will be in the future, in the next moment, will depend on what we are now. It is the theory of dependent arising to determine what we are now, which has some connection with what we were in the past. And in the same case, there is relation between what we are now and what we will be in the future. The preceding moment conditions the succeeding moment. Condition means controls or determine. The preceding moment, the previous moment, conditions the succeeding condition or controls the next moment. And thus, there is closely ordered continuity to the whole process. The whole process, we can take an example as our life. For example, in our life, it is the whole life. However, our whole life is closely ordered continuity. It is a kind of continuity. A continuity of our five aggregates. However, our five aggregates are closely ordered. Order means one by one, and a closely order means the last moment, present moment, and the next moment, or yesterday and today and tomorrow. It is closely ordered. It is not accidentally. It is not accidentally ordered. It is not the happiness of accidents. It is not by accidents, but it is by cause and the condition. And it is a continuity, just like a flowing river. The water in the flowing river continues to flow into the sea. Our whole life can be considered as a process, but our whole life is not identical from the very beginning to the day we die. But our whole life is a continuity moment by moment, and it is closely ordered. It is not something that jumping, not jumping from, for example, from yesterday to today and from today to tomorrow. No, it is a continuity of our five aggregates. Our body at this moment is a continuity of our body in the last moment. The same case as our sensation, perception, volitional formation, and consciousness. And then at the moment of death, at the last moment, the quality of those consciousness, the quality means the condition. The condition of the last consciousness. The last consciousness means when we die, when our consciousness leaves our body. What is the consciousness at the time when our consciousness leaves our body, whether it is wholesome or unwholesome? The quality of the last consciousness conditions, determines the quality of the next moment, of the next consciousness to take rebirth. Conditions the arisings. Condition the arising determines the arising of the rebirth consciousness. Of course, this is the case of an ordinary person. If a practitioner of Buddha Dharma, a practitioner of Buddha Dharma, he is always peaceful, he is always calm, he is always concentrated in his mind. So he can observe clearly the continuity of the five aggregates. And when the unwholesome consciousness arises, he observes it, that he will stop it. He will stop the unwholesome consciousness and try to transform it to the wholesome consciousness. And then he can have better future or better next life. This is the theory of the dependent arising. Although it is non-self, it is changing all the time, and it is a continuity. But the mechanism of dependent arising functions here at every moment. Every moment when a person can be calm, can be concentrated, can be clear in his mind, then he can observe the quality of the consciousness or the mind, and he can transform or he can change the direction of his thought, Then he can turn to the bright future or the happy future. Nothing is carry over. Nothing is carry over. Means the last moment carries no ego to the next moment. For example, the body of the last moment doesn't come to the next moment. No, because the body of the last moment is changing also. So it is changing to the next moment. The same case, the sensation, the feeling of the last moment doesn't come to the present moment, and it doesn't come to the future moment. It is changing. Our sensation is changing. So the sensation, the feeling of our last moment is changing to the present moment. And the sensation or feeling of present moment is changing to the next moment. So the five aggregates of this moment are different from the five aggregates of last moment. And the five aggregates of the next moment will be different from the five aggregates of this moment. Nothing is carried over from the last moment to the present moment, and nothing is carried over again from this moment to the next moment. This is very important. This is the theory of non-self, because the theory of non-self says that everything is changing. So any aggregate or any component of our life doesn't come to from moment, doesn't come to the next moment from this moment. It is changing. It is changing all the time. Nothing is carried over This is very important. Although in Mahayana Buddhism, we say that the Araya consciousness connects the past life with this life and connects this life with next life. But our Araya consciousness is always changing all the time. Our Araya consciousness doesn't remain the same in 2 moments. It is changing all the time because our consciousness will be influenced by our action and the speech and the thought, and then our latent tendency will emerge to our consciousness. So our consciousness is changing all the time. Our consciousness is not carry over from last life to present life and to the future life. It is not the same rare consciousness which came from last life to present life. And it will not be the same rare consciousness will go to the next life from this life. Everything is changing. Nothing is carried over. This sentence is very important to understand the meaning of non-self and dependent arising. Because of dependent arising, so every moment it is changing. And because of the concept of non-self, there is no entity, there is no ego to be carried over from moment to moment. Yet, dependent on the last consciousness, arises the new consciousness. Depending on the last consciousness of, for example, present life, arises the new consciousness of next life. It is the continuum. It is causally all the continuity, but nothing comes from the past to the present and to the future. Therefore, from moment to moment, we can change our direction. We can transform our mind. We can transform our consciousness to a better state, to an enlightened state. This is very important. Nothing is carried over from moment to moment. However, the last consciousness will determine the next consciousness. But it is changing all the time, no entity. Non-self and emptiness, both non-self and dependent arising combine to show how early Buddhism understands the notion of emptiness. When Anatta asked the Buddha, Venerable Sir, it is said, empty is the world, empty is the world. In what way, Venerable Sir, is it say, empty is the world? The Buddha say in reply, it is Ananda, because it is empty of self, and what belongs to self, that it is said, empty is the self. Both non-self and the dependent arising together shows how early Buddhism understands the notion of emptiness. emptiness is always mentioned in Mahayana Buddhism. And emptiness actually is the combination of non-self and dependent arising. Emptiness means emptiness of entity, emptiness of a substance. This is the meaning of emptiness. Emptiness is called sunya in Pali and sunyata in Sanskrit. Early Buddhism interprets emptiness by both non-self and the dependent arising. In early Buddhism, non-self is always emphasized. In Mahayana Buddhism, emptiness is always emphasized. And in early Buddhism, non-self is the consequence of impermanence or anicca, the suffering or dukkha. A Buddha explains impermanence first, and then suffering, and then non-self in early Buddhism. But in Mahayana Buddhism, Buddha directly mentioned the notion or the idea of emptiness, because the practitioner of Mahayana Buddhism are supposed to have a better capacity, so they can better understand the meaning of emptiness. They don't rely on impermanence and suffering, but they can easily understand the meaning of emptiness. Therefore, in Mahayana Buddhism, the Buddha usually goes to emptiness directly. The Buddha doesn't mention impermanence and suffering before emptiness. When another asked the Buddha, Venerable Sir, Venerable Sir here means the Buddha. The Buddha, or Your Holiness, it is said, empty is the world. Empty is the world. In what way is it say empty is the world? Another asked the Buddha, what does it mean by empty is the world? The Buddha say in reply, the Buddha say, it is ananda, because it is empty of self, and what belongs to self, that is say, empty is the world. It means that the sentence of empty is the world, or we can say in other way, the world is empty. It is the same thing. But when we want to emphasize empty, then we put empty at the beginning of this sentence. Actually, the subject is the world. The world. The empty is adjective. The world is empty. If we want to emphasize empty, then we put empty at the beginning of this sentence. Empty is the world. It means empty of self. Then the word means self, and also empty of what belongs to self. The empty of what belongs to self. Here, the meaning of empty or emptiness means the meaning of empty means devoid of or not existent. The self doesn't exist. And what belongs to the self also doesn't exist. There is no self, and there is nothing belonging to the self. The word here, the word in early Buddhism means the self and what belongs to the self. And actually, it is our empirical personality, or it is our experience. Therefore, empty is the word means empty is our experience. And our experience is within the five aggregates. Therefore, empty is the word means empty are the five aggregates. Because an ignorant person will take the five aggregates as either self or nice mind or my five aggregates, or there is a self within the five aggregates, or there is a self outside the five aggregates. All of this refers to our experience. Our experience is empty. Why our experience is empty? Because our experience is dependent originated. If we want to see something, it depends on our eyes and the visible object. So the function of seeing something is dependent originated. It doesn't exist by itself, but it depends on our sense organ and its external visible object and the other conditions. All the five aggregates are dependent originated. Therefore, our experience is empty because our experience is dependent originated. It doesn't mean we don't have the experience, but our experience is empty because our experience depends on some factors to arise our experience. In the Sutta Nipata, we find the Buddha bidding Mogaraja to see the world as empty. Sunyato no kam aveka su. As noted earlier, for early Buddhism, world means the world of experience, the world we experience with our sense faculties. And it is precisely this world that early Buddhism resolves into the five aggregates, the 12 sense spaces, and the 18 elements of cognition. If the world is empty, then it logically and inevitably follows that the factors into which the world is analyzed are also empty. Empty and the non-self become mutually comfortable expressions. What is non-self is empty, and likewise, what is empty is non-self. Sutta Nipata. Sutta means scripture, the Buddhist canon. And the Nipata means collection. Sutta Nipata means the collection of Buddhist scriptures. It is a sutta collection in the Khuddaka Nikaya. Khuddaka, 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 Khuddaka. Khuddaka Nikaya. Khuddaka means small, small collection, small sutras. Sutta Nipada is believed to be the very first teaching of the Buddha, although it is collected after the other Nikayas, other four Nikayas are composed before the Sutta Nipada or the Khuddaka Nikaya. Khuddaka Nikaya means the small or smaller collection of the Buddha's suttas. But the Sutta Nipada are believed to be the very first teachings of the Buddha. In the Sutta Nipada, we find the Buddha bidding Mogaraja. Bidding Mogaraja means teaching or asking him or advise Mogaraja. Mogaraja is a disciple of the Buddha. To see the world as empty. How to see the world is empty? The Buddha told Mogaraja that our aggregates of body, of the Urupa Kanda, are just like a group of bubbles, and our sensation is just like a foam in the river, and our perception or sankhara is just like a mirage in the summertime, and our mental formation is just like a banana tree, and our consciousness is just like a magic. So the Buddha bid Mogaraja, you have to see the world as empty. The five aggregates are empty, and our experience is the result, the function of our five aggregates. Therefore, our experience is empty, and our experience is regarded as the world of our life. The Buddha asked Mogaraja to see the world as empty. It means the Buddha asked Mogaraja to observe. To see means to observe or to meditate on the emptiness of our five aggregates, of our experience and of the world. This is the meaning of the world. The world is empty. Sunato means empty. Lokam means the world. Avekashu means to observe carefully, or to meditate on the world as empty. As noted earlier, for early Buddhism, world means the world of experience, the world of experience. And the experience is nothing but the five aggregates. the world we experience with our six sense faculties. We experience with our six sense faculty. It means the experience of our seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and thinking. This is our world. Everybody's world is different because everybody's five aggregates are different. And it is precisely this world that early Buddhism resolves into. Okay, this means that early Buddhism analyzed this world of experience into the five aggregates, khandha, panchakhandha, the 12 sense bases. A sense basis means the basis to arise sense. Our sense of seeing, hearing, smelling, touching, tasting, and thinking. That there are a total of 12 sense bases refer to the six sense faculties at their external object, the six objects of sense faculties, and the 18 elements of cognition. 18 elements refers to the six sense faculties, the six objects of sense faculties, and the six kinds of consciousness. In total, there are 18. There are 18 elements of cognition. It means that when we cognize the world, it is not beyond the scope of the 18 elements. If the world is empty, then it logically and inevitably, logically means it is reasonable. By means of logic thinking, then we can naturally comes to this conclusion. And inevitably, it means it should follow. Inevitably, there is no other way. The only consequence is that the factors into which the world is analyzed are also empty. It means because our world is empty, and our world is nothing but the function of the five aggregates, the 12 sense bases, and the 18 elements of cognition. Therefore, when the world is empty, naturally, we come to the conclusion that the five aggregates, the 12 sense bases, and the 18 elements are also empty. It is a logical resolution and an inevitable resolution. Empty and the non-self become mutually comfortable expression because we have discussed a lot of the non-self, but we discussed from the perspective of the five aggregates. We analyze that the five aggregates are not ourselves, and also within the aggregates, five aggregates, there's no self. And therefore, when the Buddha say that the world is empty, it means that empty is equal to non-self. These two expressions are mutually convertible. Convertible means that we can say that empty is non-self and the non-self is empty. They are the same. What is non-self is empty, and likewise, what is empty is non-self. This is the meaning of mutually convertible expression. As the Buddha's reply shows, emptiness is not a separate characteristic. Rather, it is another expression for non-self. It means that emptiness is not the additional characteristic to describe our existence. We say that there are three characteristics in regard to our existence: impermanence, suffering, and non-self. And when the Buddha say that the world is empty, emptiness is not the fourth characteristic. Emptiness is exactly the same meaning of non-self. So in Theravada Buddhism, there are only three characteristics in talking about our existence. However, in Chinese Buddhism, we sometimes add another characteristic, that is the emptiness, or sometimes we mention nirvana or nibbana as the fourth characteristic of our life. And in Theravada Buddhism, emptiness is nothing but non-self. Emptiness is not the fourth characteristic of existence, because emptiness means non-self. So three characteristics are enough to describe the nature of our existence. Therefore, from the early Buddhist perspective, we have the full liberty of restating the well-known statement: all things are non-self, sabbe dhamma anatta, as all things are empty, sabbe dhamma shunya. All things, sabbe dhamma, embrace not only the conditioned sankhata phenomena, but the unconditioned nibbana as well. Thus, both the world of sensory experience and the unconditioned reality that transcends it are empty. What this means is that the characteristic of non-self or emptiness is more universal than even impermanence. So thorough is Buddhism rejection of substantialism. Therefore, from the early Buddhist perspective, we have the full liberty of restating. We have the full liberty of restating means that we can restate, we can mention the well-known statement in another way. Usually we say, sabbe dhamma anatta. Sabbe in Sanskrit is sava, but in Pali is sabbe. Sabbe means all. Dhamma, all things. All phenomena, anatta, non-self. All things are non-self. Sabbe dhamma shunya. Sabbe Dhamma Sunya, all Dhamma, all things, all phenomena are empty, are empty. All things, Sabbe Dhamma, embrace not only the conditions, Sankhata, phenomenon, but the unconditioned Nibbana as well. We says that all sankhara anicca, all sankhara dukkha, all dhamma anatta, or we say sabbe sankhara anicca, sabbe sankhara dukkha. However, sabbe dhamma anatta. Okay. It means that all things are non-self or empty, can embrace, can explain the characteristic of not only the conditions phenomena, but also the unconditioned Nibbana. It means that emptiness or non-self can explain everything. Non-self or emptiness can explain everything, can explain our experience, our world, and it can explain Nibbana, or we can also say that emptiness or non-self, anatta or shunya can explain what is mentioned in other religions as heaven, or the God, or the creator, or the soul. Everything can be explained by means of anatta or shunya, or by non-self or emptiness. So emptiness or non-self can be used to explain the reality of all things, not only of the conditioned phenomena, but also the unconditioned Nibbana. It is very important. And we can use a very simple expression to experience everything that is emptiness or non-self. Thus, both the world of sensory experience, the world of sensory experience is the conditioned phenomena, because our sensory experience is dependent, originated, depends on other factors. And the unconditioned reality. The unconditioned reality means the truth, the ultimate truth, or the peaceful experience of our reality that is called Nibbana or Nirvana. That transcends it, and that transcends it. That transcends it. It means the world of sensory experience. When one is liberated, when one is enlightened, then we say that this person are awakened to Nirvana, or the ultimate reality, both the world of conditioned and the unconditioned, are emptiness. Okay. What this means is that the characteristic of non-self or emptiness is more universal than even impermanence. Okay, more universal means can be applied to all conditions. So thorough is Buddhism rejection of substantialism. It means that Buddhism doesn't accept the reality, doesn't accept the concept of self or entity. Everything is changing. Everything is in a continuity. Nothing is carried over from moment to moment. The putative over self, in the light of what has been discussed above, we need to examine now the issue of the overself. Is there a self entity over and above the five aggregates, a self that transcends the five aggregates, taken selectively or collectively? As far as early Buddhism is concerned, the question has no relevance. For Buddhism, explains the totality of phenomenal existence and the emancipation from it in such a way that it simply rules out the very necessity of raising the question. In the light of means after we have discussed in a great detail about the concept of non-self, then we need to examine now the issue of the overself. Now we can discuss the issue or the topic of the overself. The overself means the self above or outside our five aggregates or our experience. Is there a self-entity? Is there a self-entity? Is there a substance which is over and above the five aggregates? Is there such a self-entity over and above? Over and above means transcends our five aggregates, taken selectively or collectively. Selectively means we may take the body one aggregate of the rupa, or we can select the body and the sensation, or even we can select the four mental formations or the four aggregates of our mind and the mental function. As far as early Buddhism is concerned, the question has no relevance. It means that the early Buddhism is beyond the question of whether there is a self-entity above and over the five aggregates. It means the true self or the overself. It has no relevance. It has no relation. If we understand the early Buddhism, then we will have no idea of the true self or overself. For Buddhism, explains the totality of phenomenal existence and the emancipation from it. It means Buddhism explains the present situation of samsara. And samsara is full of unsatisfactoriness or sufferings. And therefore, our goal or our aim is to have emancipation from samsara. Emancipation means liberation, or to leave the sufferings of suffering. This is the content of the Four Noble Truths. The Noble Truths of dukkha, the Noble Truths of the causes to dukkha, the Noble Truths of emancipation from dukkha, the Noble Truths of the ways leading to the liberation or emancipation from the dukkha. The Four Noble Truths can be used to explain all the Buddha Dharma. So whatever the Buddhism discusses, it is nothing, the Four Noble Truths. Buddhism explains the Four Noble Truths in such a way that it simply rules out the very necessity of raising this question, whether there is an overself or true self, because the Four Noble Truths explains that our existence is nothing but the functioning of the dependent origination. So if we understand dependent origination or origin, then we understand there is no self. There is no overself or the true self. That being said, as we have noted, at the beginning of this chapter, the above question is raised particularly by modern scholars with a Vedanic orientation, while also by those who profess a perennial philosophy based on the supposed transcendental unity of all religions. Okay, at the beginning of this chapter, we have discussed already that the question of the true self or overself is mentioned by modern scholars with a Vedantic orientation. It means that they have the mindset, or they have the idea of Veda. They have the idea of Veda. The Veda is the scripture of the Hinduism or Brahmanism. And also by other religious scholars, in particular the Western scholars on religions. They always believe a religion should have the idea of a creator God or an almighty God, omniscient God. It is their belief, of course. Only Buddhism doesn't accept the idea of a creator God. Only Buddhism promotes the concept of non-self or emptiness. But except Buddhism, other religions always believes that there is a creator God, and the question of the overself or true self is thus very popular among the scholars of religions or the believers of other religions. Even in Buddhism, some followers of Buddhism also believe that there is a self. Their basic assumption is that when the Buddha says that the five aggregates are non-self, this does not mean that there is no self. It only means that none of the five aggregates can be identified as our true self because they are subject to impermanence and are a source of suffering. The true self, it is contented, is besides the five aggregates and could be discovered only by transcending the false empirical self. If the false self, which is thus transcended, is impermanent, subject to suffering, and marked by non-substantiality, the true self, so discovered, has the opposite three characteristics, namely permanence, nature, happiness, sukha, and the fact of being the true self, atta. If one suffers, so runs their argument, it is because of their estrangement from his true self, and therefore, in their view, attainment of nibbana means a positive return of the self to itself. Okay. Those scholars or religious followers who believe that there is a true self or overself, their basic consumption is that because they also believe that in Buddhism there should be a concept of self, and they believe that when the Buddha says that the five aggregates are non-self, this does not mean that there is no self. Why? Why they believe in this way? Because they say, when Buddha says that the five aggregates are non-self, it means that the five aggregates are impermanent, are changing all the time. And therefore, the five aggregates are a source of suffering. And of course, it is their misunderstanding. Our suffering doesn't come from the five aggregates. Our suffering comes from our ignorance and our clinging to the five aggregates. When we cling to the permanence of the five aggregates, then we will suffer because the five aggregates are changing all the time. So when the five aggregates change, then we will suffer. So the five aggregates are not the source of suffering. It is our ignorance and the clinging to the five aggregates. Therefore, we suffer. It is their misunderstanding that the five aggregates are a source of suffering. No, in Buddhism, we don't say that. We say that our suffering comes from ignorance and the clinging and attachment and craving. The true self, it is contented. They contented or they argue. They argue the true self is besides the five aggregates. The true self S is capitalized. It refers to the God, the Creator above us. The true self, they argue, is beyond the five aggregates and could be discovered only by transcending the false empirical self. If we want to find the true self, then we have to transcend, we have to go beyond our five aggregates. Otherwise, we cannot find the true self. Okay, this is the belief of other religions. That in India, even Jainism believes in this way. So the practitioner of Jainism tortures themselves because they want to transcend the five aggregates in order to find the true self. It is the belief of other religions. There is an Almighty God, there is a Creator God, there is the true self. If we want to have liberation or freedom, then we have to return to our source of the God. If the false self, which is not transcended, is impermanent, subject to suffering, marked by non-substantiality, the true self, so discovered, has the opposite three characteristics, namely permanence, nature, happiness, sukha, and the fact of being the true self, atta. Okay, our five aggregates should be transcended, because our five aggregates are anicca, dukkha, anatta. Therefore, if we want to liberate from suffering, then we have to go or to realize the opposite characteristic. They are nitya. Nitya means permanence. Sukha, happiness, and the atta, the self. These three characteristics are the quality of the liberation. It is their belief. If one suffers, so wrongs their argument. Their argument continues to say, if we suffer, it is because we are away from our true self. We are not united with our true self. And therefore, in their view, attainment of Nibbana means a positive return of the self to itself. Of course, this is the misunderstanding of the meaning of Nibbana. And from this sentence, we can understand that actually Buddhism cannot be regarded as a religion, because the meaning of religion is return of the self to itself. Return the self of itself to itself means its origin. This is the meaning of religion. And Buddhism rejects the idea of self. Buddhism emphasizes emptiness or anatta. Therefore, actually, Buddhism is not a religion, and the correct expression is not Buddhism. Buddhism actually is a wrong phrase, a wrong expression. We should say Buddha Sasana, not Buddhism. Buddhism was coined by the Western scholars when they came from Europe to India or to Sri Lanka. They encountered such kind of practice that they use their concept of Christianity to coin the name of Buddhism. The name of Buddhism means the Buddha's ism. The ism means absolute principle or absolute authority. So Buddhism actually is wrong. We cannot say Buddha's teaching us a Buddhism. Buddhism or Buddha is not authoritarian. Buddha says that he discovered the truth of non-self and explained to us and teach us how to attain Nibbana. How to attain Nibbana should be achieved by the practice of the Eightfold Noble Path. In short, the understanding of the Four Noble Truths. So it is the teachings of the Buddha. It is not the order. It is not the requirement of the Buddha, but Buddha teaches us that we have to practice by ourselves. If we want to attain Nibbana or liberation from suffering, we have to practice the Siddha, Samatha, and the Vipassana. Okay, this is the true meaning of Buddha Sasana. Sasana, S-A-S-S-A-N-A. Sasana means teaching. The correct name should be Buddha Sasana, not Buddhism, because Buddhism has no concept of return of the self to itself, or the return of we to the Creator. We don't have such concept. One canonical passage often cited by those who maintain this theory is the passage where the wandering philosopher Vajragota asked the Buddha whether the self exists or not. In each case, the Buddha remains silent. This silence on the part of the Buddha has been interpreted in two ways. According to some, it was because the Buddha did not want to shock a weak-minded hero by saying that there's no self. According to others, the logical conclusion from this would be that something is, though it is not the empirical self. Okay, this is a famous sutta. This is a very famous sutta, and also cited by those who maintain this theory. This theory that Buddhism should have the concept of self. They maintain, they propose, they believe that Buddhism also have the concept of self. So according to them, that the attainment of Nibbana is a positive return of the self to itself. They quote this passage where the wandering philosopher means Sramana, or in Pali, Samana. Samana or Sramana means a wandering practitioner in order to find emancipation from suffering. His name is Vajragotta. Gotta means a family or the nature of a person. Or in India, there are 4 castes. Gotta means one of the 4 castes. Vajra is a kind of caste or a kind of category of the people. Vajragotta asked the Buddha whether the self exists or not, in which case the Buddha remains silent. The Buddha doesn't answer Vajragotta's question whether there is a self. The silence on the part of the Buddha has been interpreted in 2 ways. There are 2 ways of explanation why the Buddha didn't answer the question. The first interpretation, according to some, it was because the Buddha did not want to shock a weak-minded hero by saying that there is no self. Weak-minded hero means Vajragotta. Vajragotta is supposed to have a weak mind. His mind is not strong enough. He cannot tolerate the concept of non-self. When he hears there is no self within himself, within all the people, then he will be shocked. Then he will collapse because all the ordinary beings needs to have something to support his psychology, to support his mind. If he hears the teaching of non-self, he may collapse. This is the first interpretation. The second interpretation is the logical conclusion from this. The logical condition from why the Buddha doesn't answer the question whether there is a self would be the natural conclusion would be that something is. Something is. It means that there should be something beyond the 5 aggregates. There should be over self, because the 5 aggregates are considered as the existence of a person. So something beyond 5 aggregates, something beyond empirical self, there should be something beyond the empirical self or the 5 aggregates. It means that there should be a true self, or there should be an over self. There are 2 interpretations. In point of fact, the correct position can be seen from the same discourse when the Buddha told Ananda as to why he decided to remain silent. If we want to know what is the correct position about why Buddha doesn't answer the question of whether there is self, we can find the answer from the same sutta. Discourse means suttas. The same sutta. It means that when Vajragoda asks the Buddha whether there is self, the Buddha doesn't answer. Then Vajragoda is not satisfied that he leaves the Buddha. After the Vajragoda leaves, Ananda asks the Buddha, why you didn't answer Vajragoda's question? So it is in the same sutta. After the Vajragoda leaves, then Ananda asks Buddha, and then the Buddha answers. If Ananda, when Vajragoda asks, is there a self? I had said there is a self, then I should have been one of those who hold the doctrine of eternalism. Okay. The Buddha explained to Ananda why I remain silent. It is because if I answer there is a self, then I am a believer of eternalism. But the Buddha say, I don't believe eternalism because dependent arising is the truth. Nothing is eternal. So the Buddha say, if I answer there's a self, then I am the believer of eternalism, but I am the discoverer of dependent arising. Nothing is eternal, so I remain answer. But if I had replied, there's no answer, then I would have been one of those who hold the doctrine of annihilation. It means the Buddha said, affirm the truth of our existence is dependent arising. Therefore, there is no self. And of course, we cannot say there's no self. The middle path is to keep aloof from both eternalism and annihilationism. Therefore, the Buddha said, I also remain silent. I didn't answer the question. If I answer, there is no self, then I am a believer of annihilationism, but I don't believe in annihilationism. The dependent arising is the only truth. The dependent arising keeps aloof from both eternalism and annihilationism. And if when Vajragoda asks, is there a self? I had replied, there is a self. Would it have been in accordance with the knowledge that all things are without self? Okay, the Buddha asked Ananda. If the Buddha replied, there is a self, then it is against the concept of non-self. So he asked Ananda, is it in accordance with the theory of non-self? Aranta answered, no, it is against the theory of non-self. And as a result, the Buddha remained silent, and the Buddha doesn't answer, there is a self. Then the Buddha asked again, if I had said, there is no self, the bewildered Vajragoda would have become still more weird thinking, then did myself exist before and now it does not exist anymore? Then the Buddha said, if I answer there's no self, then the Vajragoda would become perplexed. He would be more confused and think, then you mean there's no self? Then you mean that myself exists before and now it does not exist anymore? This is also the misconception of the self. But actually, the Buddha says ananta, or impermanent or dependent origination. Therefore, we cannot say that there is a self, and also we cannot say there is no self. Absolutely, there is no everlasting entity. There is only ever-changing continuity of the five aggregates, and nothing is carried over from last moment to present moment and to the future moment, because the five aggregates are changing already. In 2 moments, there is no entity comes from the past and will go to the future. If any conclusion can be drawn from this, it is that Buddhism does not subscribe to the theory of the self as recognized both in the eternalist and the annihilationist ideologies. Not that the Buddha believed in itself. Okay, from this sutra discourse about whether there is self or not a self, and the Buddha remains silent. Then Aranta asked the question, why the Buddha, you remain silent? Then the Buddha answered, the answer. Then from this discourse, the conclusion is that Buddhism does not subscribe. Buddhism does not support, or Buddhism does not mention the theory of the self as organized, as recognized both in the eternalist or the neo-nationalism ideologies. It means that the Buddha's teachings is not a kind of eternalism and annihilationism. Not that the Buddha believed in itself, and also the Buddha didn't believe in a self. The Buddha always emphasized that there's no self because of dependent arising. Our five aggregates are dependent arising. Our five aggregates are changing all the time. So there is no self, whether in the ideology of eternalism or annihilationism. What is most intriguing is that some modern scholars who quote this dialogue between the Buddha and the Vajragopal, either by design or by accident, bypass the Buddha's own explanation to Ananda as to why he remains silent. When Vajragopal raised the question whether the self exists or not, what is most intriguing? What is most intriguing? It means that it is quite ununderstandable. We can understand why some modern scholars who quote this discourse or who quotes the dialogue between the Buddha and Vajragopal about whether there is self and the Buddha remains silent, either by design or by accident. By design means intentionally, or by accident means it is their negligence. It is not their intention. Anyway, they bypass means that they don't mention the Buddha's own explanation to Ananda. And actually, it is in the same sutta. After the Vajragopal leaves, then Ananda raised the question to the Buddha. The Buddha answered. However, some modern scholars just take what they want and they neglect the succeeding explanation of the Buddha to Ananda. It is very intriguing. It is unthinkable. They intentionally neglect the Buddha's explanation to Ananda. Okay, time is up. I think there are some questions. Okay.
Yes, thank you, Professor Ching. There's a question on the Zoom chat to clarify some queries. The first question is a query from Ching. Dear Professor Ching, my questions are as follows. Only the quality of the last consciousness continues to be to the next life. What determines where or when or what incarnation the next life will be? Thank you, Professor, for clarifying.
Okay. If the last consciousness, for example, of this life is unwholesome, then the incarnation of the next life will be in the animal realms or in the ghost realm or even in the realm of the hell. And if the last consciousness of this life is wholesome, then the next life will be born in human realm. This is the answer to where the when according to Theravada Buddhism, the last consciousness will continue to the first consciousness of next life. There is no gap between this life and the next life. However, in the Savastivadin or in the Northern Buddhism, we believe that there is a plateau or intermediate existence between death of this life and the birth of next life. The explanation is different. This is the answer to when. And what is same as well when the quality of the last consciousness of one life is wholesome, then we'll go to the realm of human being or the realm of the heaven, Deva. Otherwise, if the quality is unwholesome, then this person will be reborn in the three lower realms. Okay.
Sir,
According, okay.
sir, yeah. Sir, may I ask one question?
Yes.
Yeah, because tonight is the Christmas night, and so I ask just one question.
Yes.
And we all know that the Christian always thought after death they would go to the kingdom of heaven or kingdom of God. And what do you think? Do they really would be as they wish, or they just go to the other place, the ruin of animal or the ruin of the ghost?
According to Buddhism, where will we be reborn is dependent on the quality of this life, or the most important determination is the quality of the last moment of this life. So I believe that the quality of the last moment of this life, if it is wholesome, if it is good, then they can be reborn as a human being or even in the Deva. But it is the realm of desire, the Deva of the realm of the desire, not the Deva of the realm of Rupa or even Arupa. It is only in the realm of desire, the Deva or the heavenly beings of the realm of desire. Because they still have the desire, they still want to be reborn in the paradise. It is a kind of desire. It is not the purification of their mind by means of practice jhana. If they practice jhana, they can be reborn in the rupa realm, rupa dhatu, or even arupa dhatu. Okay, because they have a good thought. They have a good thought, and they can be reborn in the realm of desire, the heaven realm of desire, according to Buddhism.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, here I have
There's
another
another
question.
question. Yes,
Okay.
from Ching on the Zoom chat as well. According to dependent arising and not bringing past life's karma to this or next life, does this mean that there is no retribution to bad actions, only dependent arising on the conditional phenomena based on present decisions? I'm not sure if I understand this correctly.
No, you misunderstand. According to dependent arising, it not bringing past lives karma to this next life. It doesn't mean that. Past lives karma is also changing, but past lives karma will determine this or next life. Although there is no karma will be carried over to this or next life, but it will conditions or it will determine the quality of this or next life. There is retribution to bad the good action because it is dependent origination. If the karma of past life is good, then the good karma will conditions the good condition of this life or future life. Okay, so you are misunderstanding. We have to understand correctly. Next question. No?
The third question, also from Ching. If in many religions, there is the desire to discover the true self, happiness, and permanence, are these three characteristics that motivate people to indulge in the idea of heaven in the afterlife?
No, not all the three characteristics. Only the characteristic of the first two, impermanence, the suffering, or anicca, the dukkha. But they don't have the characteristic of anatta. They don't have the correct wisdom to see their existence as non-self. So not all the three characteristics, only the first two. The first two characteristics they have to motivate them to indulge in the idea of heaven in the afterlife. The idea, the characteristic of non-self or anatta is unique. It's only available in Buddhism. That it is the most valuable that the Buddha contribute to our human beings or even to the science. All phenomena can be explained by non-self or emptiness. Okay. Chin, is it okay for you? Can you understand? Okay, thank you a lot. Merry Christmas to you, all of you.
And thank you, Professor Ching, for the detailed exposition and discussion today of non-self and emptiness, anatta and sunya in the 4th chapter of the book. Before we end this online Dhamma session, dear fellow class members, once again, please turn on our video cameras. Let us put our palms together. Let us listen and repeat after Professor Ching as we invite the professor to lead the class in the dedication of merits. Professor, please.
May all sentient beings understand emptiness.
May all
sentient
beings
beings
understand
understand
emptiness.
May all sentient beings live in emptiness.
May all
Sentient
sentient
beings
beings
live
live
in
in emptiness.
May all sentient beings attain Nibbana.
May all sentient beings attain Nirvana.
May the whole world be peaceful.
The whole world
May
be
the whole
peaceful.
world be peaceful.
Thank you, Lord, all of you.
Thank you, Professor.
Namo Amito.
Namo
Dear fellow class members, please continue to put our palms together. In gratitude and with great appreciation, please give one bow to the professor and Dharma teacher. Thank you, Professor Ching, once again. Thank you for your Dharma teachings over the course of the year in 2022. Wishing you a happy new year in 2023 and best of health.
Happy New Year, Merry Christmas. Okay, see you again.
Đấy.
Good night, all of you.